We're dropping into the kingdom of Ezelbite, right in the heart of the Croizor territory. This old lady was wandering all over the place, searching everywhere for Ray. She asked a random guy who hadn't seen him, but then a lady mentioned seeing him with some kids earlier and handed over a small gift for Ray to say thanks for his help. The old lady keeps hunting for Ray and starts questioning some local kids. They tell her Ray was headed to the lighthouse to play with the seagulls. She looks completely drained, but she keeps pushing forward. Ray actually looks totally chill right now, right at the very peak of the lighthouse. He was having a blast just chilling and feeding a whole swarm of seagulls. Dine watches from the side and can tell that everyone there is totally obsessed with him. Ray asked if she was having a blast too, since they were right by the sea with water everywhere. Suddenly, Dine hears someone shouting Ray's name, and when they look down, they spot the old lady who's been looking for him. The old lady screams for Ray to get back because the Lord is calling for him, and Ray shouts that he's on his way. He leaped right off the lighthouse and called out for Sylphie. Out of nowhere, the spirit pops up and is super hyped to play with Ray. The spirit finally unleashed his crazy power, so Ray could literally hover in midair and then just land on the ground without a scratch. Sylphie begs him to play one more time, but Ray has to say no because his dad is calling. So he promises the spirit he'll be back later while the old lady notes that he hasn't changed a bit. She rushed over to Ray and warned him that even though the spirits clearly adore him, he's gotta keep those powers on the down low once he starts at the academy, and Ray just gave her a knowing smile. He knew things would get messy if the word got out, since having the wind spirit's blessing and being loved by water spirits was basically unheard of. The Croyd's territory is run by a Viscount family from Ezelbite, and since it's the only spot for sea trade, they're the permanent big bosses of the Navy. But being way too strong just gets you unwanted attention like the old boss. So Ray's better off if everyone thinks he's just a regular guy with a spirit blessing. He doesn't actually have a grudge against the kingdom. He just wants to stop any future drama before it even starts. To him, this isn't just some random favor from spirits because Dine and Sylphie are actually his close friends. The old lady tells him he's got to fix his hair before meeting his dad because it's literally covered in gross bird bath water. He finally got home and bolted straight to his dad's room, and after a quick knock, his father told him to come inside. Ray's dad, Viscount Kane Kreutzer, asks when he's leaving for the academy ceremony, so Ray tells him he's heading out solo the day after tomorrow. Kane had his back because he knew Ray would be totally fine, especially since he traveled to the academy all by himself when he first started. He's got Renesia with him for the trip back, so they're taking a carriage this time. Kane cracks up and teases him, saying that if he meets a nice girl, he's totally free to bring her back home. The son makes it totally clear that he's heading to the academy to study, not to find himself a bride. But wait, didn't he have something super important he wanted to talk about? Kane's totally down, but since Ray is passing through the Duke of Norfolk's land on his way to the capital, he asks him to drop off some important Navy papers to the Duke. Ray got the point and asked if he should just hand over the files face-to-face instead. His dad said yes, but since the Duke is super busy, Ray might have to give everything to the Duchess instead, along with a letter his dad wrote for him. Ray asks his dad if something's up, but Kane just laughs it off and says he's just trying not to be rude, so even though Ray is confused, he totally gets it. When the day finally came for him to head out, his dad told him to stay safe on the road. His little sister begs him to spill all the academy secrets when he returns, while his younger brother is basically in tears, asking him to come back as fast as he can. Mom tries to comfort the kid since Ray is heading out, telling him he's got to say goodbye with a big smile. Ray dropped to one knee and told Kevin that while he was away at the capital, he was counting on him to keep Racia and their mom safe. Kevin wipes his eyes and swears he'll keep his mom and sister safe, but Risha shuts him down because he'll never be able to replace Ray. Ray told his sister she better start acting like a lady if she ever wants to find a guy, but Risha just hit him with a massive side-eye. She winks and says she's way better at putting on a brave face than she looks, then tells her brother to do his best and find a girl as amazing as their mom, which leaves. But then, their mom totally shocks them, saying he needs to take this chance to be around girls his age since she's sure her son will be the most popular guy at the academy. His mom gets super serious and tells him that if he ever wants to find his soulmate, he just needs to follow the spirit's lead since that's how she met Cain, and Ray promises he'll do exactly that. He hopped on his horse and waved goodbye to his family, but before he took off, Risha made him promise to send a letter the second he reached the academy. Kevin yelled out to his big brother, telling him to stay safe on his trip. Then he just hits the gas and takes off. As he passed a carriage, he flashed a smile at a kid waving his way, with Dine and Sylphie right there by his side. Sylphie looks like she's having a total blast on her horse as they keep heading down the road. They finally hit the non-folk territory, and when Dean asks if he's crashing there, Ray says he's sticking around until the 23rd to finish a job for his dad. He couldn't just show up looking like a total mess, so he went to find an inn to fix his look first. Sylphie was super confused since his master always looked so clean and cool. He gave a quick thanks to his two spirit buddies for making his life way easier. To anyone else, he didn't. Ray gets all cleaned up and heads over to the non-folks place, where a butler leads him straight into the living room. He waits for Cara von Non-Folk to show up and introduce herself, and she tells Ray she's sorry her husband is busy working in the capital, so she'll be taking care of him instead. Ray thanked the lady and introduced himself right back. He handed over the papers his dad told him to take care of. While they grabbed some tea, Cara mentioned she heard he was traveling, and Ray confirmed he was heading to the royal capital to start at the academy this spring. Cara was super hyped to hear that, and revealed her daughter Celis was also heading to the academy. Tons of rich, noble kids go to this academy, but Lady Celis is on a whole different level. Everyone already knew her name way before the school year even started. She's the daughter of... Ray thinks Lady Celis is way out of his league, and he's pretty sure he won't even get a chance to talk to her at the academy. Cara's got one big favor to ask. She wants to know if Lady Celis can tag along with him on the road from their land to the capital. Ray's eyes went wide as he stood there in total shock. Cara was stressed that her daughter was being a huge burden, but Ray started tripping over his words, insisting she wasn't a problem at all. He tried to get a word in, but Cara heard he's soloing the whole trip, which means he's got to be a total beast in a fight. The roads are crawling with monsters and bandits, so you can't. Because of Celiala's high status, tons of people are going to try to use her or ruin her, so she's just hoping Ray can be the one friend who actually has her back. But he's totally second-guessing himself because he's not sure if he's even good enough to be her friend. Cara can tell Ray isn't some suck-up looking for a handout, and she knows he'll treat the lady like a normal person instead of just some future queen. Ray was totally lost because Cara was giving him way too much credit, and he definitely wasn't that guy. He also wasn't sure if Lady Celis would actually want to be friends with a guy she literally just met. Cara suggests tagging along as a travel buddy just so they have someone to talk to on the road. If she's not into him or he feels weird, he can totally say no, but then she asks him to think about her favor. Ray hesitated for a second, but he finally sighed and agreed to guard Sally on the way to the capital so Lady Celis could decide if he's actually friend material, and Cara was totally hyped to hear it. Ray was totally stunned when she called for her daughter, who was already waiting right outside the door. The door swings open and a lady walks in, giving a quick, polite bow. She walked right up to Ray, said hi, and told him her name. Ray stood up and bowed politely, mentioning that Lady Cara gave him the green light to join the trip to the capital. But Celis was totally annoyed that he was acting like they were, Her face totally reminded him of a girl he knew, so he blurted out if she was Celis while staring straight at her chest, making her blush like crazy and tell him to. Ray finally caught on and looked over at Kara, who was just cracking up and telling him she was getting tired of waiting for him to notice. It's been 5 whole years since they last stood face to face. They spent 2 months at the Kreutzer estate while she worked, so Ray and Celis hung out all the time. But since it was a business event, they were introduced as Carla and Celis. Ray remembered his dad totally messing with him. He asked Lady Kara straight up if his dad was really in there. She didn't straight up say he was on the list, but a letter they got earlier mentioned he'd totally forgotten them. And even though she felt bad for snooping through Ray's mail, she just couldn't resist playing a little prank. Celis cuts him off, saying she's super let down that he didn't notice a single thing. Ray is totally frozen and has no clue how to react. That's when Lady Pow. Celis was still salty that Ray forgot a friend he spent 2 whole months with. So a totally embarrassed Ray told her she just got way too beautiful before bowing down to beg for forgiveness. Celis getting super annoyed with how formal he's being, so she snaps at him to just call her Celis since they're supposed to be friends. Ray was about to speak up, but Celis totally shut him down. Ray turns to Lady Kara for help, and Celis is secretly glowing because she just heard she's gotten way prettier. Lady Kara later tells Ray he lost because her daughter is totally unstoppable once she gets like that. She gets that he's playing it safe since Celia is engaged, but she asks him to at least be friends with her when they're just chilling. Ray was totally speechless, but he heard every single word loud and clear. He turned to Celis, reached out his hand, and told her he was totally counting on her for their trip to the capital. Celis stares down at his hand and realizes something is totally wrong. He thinks back to the days when they were both just little kids. Ray told her back then that since they were friends, he was gonna be the one to keep her safe. She was just a kid back then, and even though she's grateful, she's done being the one who always needs saving because she wants to stand right by his side as a total equal. Ray thinks she's totally reckless, but that's exactly how she likes it, and she's caught off guard when he brushes a leaf against her face and admits he's not even gonna try to deny it. He just flashed a grin and told her that's exactly what he loves about her. Ray might have forgotten the words, but she really loved those memories back then. Ray notices she's totally lost in thought and asks if she's okay, but even though Celis smiles and says she's fine, she's actually thinking about how she's engaged to the future king, while Ray is just the son of a viscount. They're eventually gonna go their separate ways, but while she's still with him, she wants to make every second count and do everything she's ever dreamed of. He's doing it because he's got her back, and they finally hit the road to leave the non-human land behind. They headed off to the academy, but their carriage suddenly stopped in the woods, and Ray ended up dueling a knight until the guy's sword slipped from his hand as he crashed to the floor, and Ray was already pointing his blade at him when the announcer finally called the match. Celis and the rest of the guards were totally shocked by how that duel went down. The knight and Ray shake hands, and just like that, the deal is official. The knight was super relieved and hyped because Ray's actually got some serious skills, making it totally clear why Lady Kara trusted him to guard Celis. Ray told him the pleasure was all his since he actually learned a ton from their fight. Another knight jumps in, calling Ray a total beast for crushing their top fighters and asking where he even learned such a wild sword style. Ray tells them he actually learned this whole style from his dad, the Viscount of the Kreutzer territory. The 2 guards were completely blown away. It makes total sense that Ray is a beast since his dad is the legendary Admiral Kane Kreutzer, but Ray himself looks completely clueless. The guard reveals his dad is actually a total legend with insane strength from his time as a naval admiral, and he's shocked the kid hasn't heard any of his father's epic war stories. Ray was totally speechless because his dad always joked about being a troublemaker back in the day. But he never actually took those stories seriously until now. The guards admitted they were actually pretty salty when they heard Ray was joining the squad, but after he wrecked them in a spar, they realized he's on a whole different level. Now they know they can totally trust him to keep the prince safe. And they even asked for a rematch later, which Ray was totally down for. Then they just turn around and ditch Ray and Celis right there. Ray thinks the guards are actually super chill, and while Celis agrees, she's totally over them calling her princess because it's just way too cringy at her age. Ray tells her she better get used to the title since she's the next queen in line, but Celis just pouts and glares when he calls her princess. She crossed her arms and told him that if he's gonna call her that, he's gotta be her knight. And Ray was totally blown away when Celis ordered him to come. Ray tried to protest, but Lee shut her down with a death stare and took total control, leaving Ray with no choice but to give in and bow. They chilled on the grass with a basket of snacks, and Celis straight up told him she was shocked because she had no idea he was that powerful. She asked if he was seriously planning to major in sword fighting at the academy. Ray explains that's the plan, but he wants to try out every basic class available instead of just swords to see which ones he actually likes. He's planning to master the sword and business, but he might also dive into monster myths and magic theory since his family runs a massive sea trade hub that connects to the whole world. He asks Celis what her major is, and she says she's doing business and swordsmanship since she's actually a total beast with a blade. But she suddenly sighs because she can't take all those classes, since half her day is totally stuck in royal consort training. Ray tried to fix the vibe by asking if she'd join the student council, but that just made Lee feel even worse. She knows Prince Alex is definitely going to be an officer, so she has to join too, even though the whole idea actually freaks her out. Ray's pretty sure that Prince Alex and Celine are seriously not getting along. That really ticked her off, and she snapped at him to never say stuff like that out loud, leaving a totally stunned Ray to apologize on the spot. Celis was still in a total funk because she couldn't shake the feeling that the prince was straight up ghosting her, and even though she really looked up to him, he was so cold that she started worrying she'd accidentally done something to offend him. Ray totally feels for her because he knows just how rough things are. Celis thought he could be the knight who protects her from everything, but rabies showed up and shut that plan down fast. He had to head back to his own land to lead his people right after graduation, but Celis was still totally bummed out by how blunt he was about leaving. Ray hated seeing her so down, so he promised to do whatever he could to help her while they were at the academy. It was definitely going to be hard to meet up though, since she joked about them ending up in the same class and sharing a table because there were no other seats, and honestly, Ray's brain was just short-circuiting trying to process it all. Celis told him that even if things went south, she was still totally counting on him. Ray just grinned and told her to take it easy on him, right as Celis' knights shouted that it was finally time to head out. They head out again with the knights leading the pack, while Ray trails behind on his horse so he can keep Celine in his sights. After a bit of traveling, they finally made it to the massive royal capital. Ray waves goodbye to the knights, and Celis is totally shocked he's leaving already, but he tells her he's heading straight for the academy dorms. She clearly wants Ray to stay, so Celis offers him a spot at their huge mansion in the capital for the night, but Ray totally turns her down. Ray says he's gotta go check on his bags and handle some business before school kicks off, so Celis tells him she'll just see him at the entrance ceremony, and he promises he'll definitely track her down. They keep waving goodbye until the carriage finally pulls away. Then he hopped on his horse and raced straight to the Royal Academy. He couldn't stop grinning at his new school, and since he figured the dorms were right there on campus, he rushed down the path to find them. The second he steps inside, a woman rushes over to welcome him to the Ezelbite Royal Academy. He's in room 305 on the 3rd floor, and all his gear is already waiting for him inside. She mentions it's still spring break, so with all the campus cafes closed, He'll have to grab food at the dorm dining hall or find a spot off campus. Ray headed straight to his room, and as soon as he shut the door, the two spirits started begging to see the place, so he told them it was finally safe to come out. The two of them burst out right away, and Ray scanned the room with a huge grin before rushing over to throw the window wide open. He looked out at the Royal Academy, knowing his 3-year journey was finally starting, and he wondered what kind of person he'd actually become by the time he graduated. Dine says he's definitely going to be a total gentleman, and Ray just smiles, really hoping that's true. He rolls up his sleeves to get the whole room cleaned and organized, while Sylphie is just vibing and having a blast playing on the bed. He said he was just helping with the bags, but Ray's worried that Sylphie might use his wind magic to carry them. The sun finally pops up and it's officially a new day. And Sylphie was right there, shaking Ray out of his sleep. He heads to the window and is totally stunned by how incredible the view looks. Sylphie asks what he's up to today, and he tells her he's already finished cleaning his room. First, he's grabbing a quick breakfast and some supplies. Then he's heading straight to the marble company just like he was told. Sylphie was totally confused about the job, so while he changed, he explained his dad sent him on an errand. His old man definitely overworks him, but he gets it since his dad hardly ever gets to visit the capital. A bit later, he hit up the cafeteria and chowed down on some sausage, eggs, hot tea, and bread. He found a spot and got ready to chow down, noticing only 5 other students in the cafeteria who were all totally lost in their own little world. He's thinking about how the opening ceremony hasn't even started, but the kids are already acting like nobles and commoners are totally different. After finishing his meal, he picks up his dough. Ray was totally stunned when the lady asked if he was new just because she didn't recognize him yet. He nods and asks if she knows every student's face, but she just laughs and says that after working in the cafeteria every day, you just start to get a real feel for everyone. She explains that the stripes on his sleeve show exactly what grade he's in, and once Ray nods, she adds that she can always tell a noble from a commoner just by how they act. She's definitely caught Ray's attention, and he asks her to guess what kind of person he really is. She checks him out and sees he's just a regular guy, but his manners are way too fancy, even though he's way too relaxed to be a real noble. So she finally figures he's either a merchant or some rich kid from a wealthy family. Ray just laughs in her face because he's not some merchant, he's actually a straight-up noble, even though he's just a low-level noble from the middle of nowhere. The lady totally panicked and started begging for forgiveness for being so rude to a noble. She explained that she only thought he was a regular guy because he was actually being super nice. Ray just brushed it. She warns him to watch out for the total snobs in the area, and Ray promises he'll stay on his toes. The lady mentions her daughter Anna is starting at the Royal Academy, and she's beyond proud that a commoner like her made it in. So she asks Ray to be her friend, and she warned him to stay away from her daughter, no matter how good-looking he was. Ray told her straight up he was only there to study and wouldn't pull anything like that. He just gave the lady a quick wave and took off. Once Ray left, the lady realized her daughter definitely had a thing for guys like him, and she was low-key worried that her girl was getting way too caught up with him. The spirits were getting way too hyped to leave, so Ray told them to chill out and stay quiet while he handled his business, and after they agreed, he just gave the guard a quick wave as he's finally on his way, heading straight for the capital. He's totally blown away because this place is on a whole other level compared to all the massive buildings nearby. He keeps wandering around and notices how much energy the place has, with everyone looking like they're living their best lives. He kept walking but got totally lost looking for the marble company, so he pulled out a piece of paper to check the directions. That's when he spots a sign hanging right there on the side of a building. But as he got closer, he was totally blown away by how massive the building actually was. He heads inside and realizes the place is way bigger than he thought. but he starts feeling totally out of place because everyone looks super fancy while he's just wearing his regular street clothes. He starts thinking back and remembers the company boss is actually the brother of Enzel, the guild leader, so he wonders if they look exactly alike. Ray's eyes popped when a big guy rushed up and apologized for the wait, introducing himself as Helmet, the boss of the marble company, leaving Ray totally stunned because they looked exactly the same except for their hair. Ray stops by to introduce himself and says he's there for his dad, then mentions how much Helmet looks like Lord Enzel, which makes the guy laugh since he hears it all the time. Before, Ray tells him straight up that they owe Enzel everything since the city wouldn't be thriving without the guild's help, and Helmet is honestly stunned by how mature and calm this kid is. His brother's letters were full of hype, saying Ray is destined to be the Ocean King of the Magnalia Sea, which totally embarrassed him. But enough small talk, let's get to the good stuff. Helmet locked in and asked what the deal was, so Ray explained that the Kreutzer lands are full of ancient ruins, but since they're stuck on islands crawling with monsters, they can't explore them and need some serious backup. Helmet hears the news and suggests getting backup from the capital's Adventurer Guild, even asking Rai if he should put in a good word for him. He's totally down, and since their guild in Kreutzer is tiny compared to the main one, they really need help checking out the magic stones and loot they found in the ruins. The guy realized the Adventurers Guild could find an appraiser way faster, so he decided to hook him up with a letter of introduction. Helmet's down to help, and you should be hyped because his brother is about to score some crazy rare loot again. This means the company and the Kreutzer folks need to stick together more than ever, and Ray totally agreed, saying they owe the Merchant Guild big time. They shook hands to lock in the deal, totally hyped to work together, and Helmet gave him a final wave as he headed out. The moment he steps out of the marble company, Sylphie jumps out at him, and even though he's stoked the hard part is over, Ray's not done yet but for now, he's just gonna wander around town and hit up some shops. Sylphie was super pumped, but Ray stopped dead in his tracks the second he heard a noise. He tells Sylphie to grab all the sounds from the area and bring them right to his ears. He shut his eyes and heard someone screaming at the top of their lungs, desperately telling everyone to stay back. The voice demands to know who sent them while trying to snatch him, but the kidnapper won't talk about his client, leaving Ray totally annoyed that they're actually trying to kidnap him right in the middle of the city. He decided to help out and asked Sylphie to lead him straight to where that voice was coming from. That voice belongs to Yuri Anastasia, and even though she's caught off guard, she starts screaming at the kidnappers, mocking them for ganging up on one girl and daring them to. But those 5 kidnappers weren't buying her story for a second. They were totally ready for her because they already knew she was about to unleash her special holy magic. They're trashing her for being a saintess, making her click her tongue at how rude they are. Yuri's used to having 0 luck after growing up in a city orphanage, but her holy magic might work in a one-on-one, but there's no way she can handle 5 of them jumping her at the same time. She knows if anything happens to her, her foster dad is in huge trouble, so she's gotta act fast as those 5 guys stay on high alert and start closing in to grab her. Yuri just shut her eyes, looking like she was totally ready for the end. Out of nowhere, a massive gust of wind hit the scene and totally caught the kidnappers off guard. Yuri vanished in a heartbeat, and by the time they looked up, she was already gone. They spotted her right there with Ray, and he was totally helping her out. Yuri is still totally confused about how she even got on the roof, asking this guy who he is and if he's there to rescue her, and Ray just tells her that saving her was the plan all along. He told her they had to ditch the assassins fast, and while Yuri was totally confused about how they'd escape, Ray just smirked and told her to leave everything to him. He said sorry real quick and then just scooped her up. Yuri was totally caught off guard by his sudden move. As he suddenly took that leap, she was left totally confused about what was even happening. The look of worry on her face completely shifted. Their mood totally brightened up the second a huge flock of birds flew down to join them. Ray just kept on leaping from one rooftop to the next. Yuri asked if they were flying or bouncing, but it didn't even matter because the whole thing was just straight up incredible. They finally reached a safe spot and stopped to catch their breath. Yuri's face turned bright red as she thanked Ray for the save and finally told him her name. Ray stepped up and told everyone his name too. As they're chilling on the edge, Yuri remembers what happened earlier and asks Ray if they were actually flying and what kind of levitation magic he used. Ray explained it wasn't magic but a wind spirit, and Yuri was hyped because she'd felt the air swirling while they were flying and could still feel a breeze hanging out nearby. Ray was totally blown away because stuff like this almost never happens. Sylphie didn't usually like people, so now he was dying to find out who this girl actually was. He asks Yuri if she can feel the spirit nearby, and she tells him she's only picking up a tiny bit of its energy. Ray got dead serious and asked Yuri who those guys were, because it looked like they knew her and were straight up trying to kidnap her. Yuri's holding back because she doesn't want to be a burden, and while Ray isn't forcing her to talk, he knows he could fix everything way faster if she just told him what was going on. Yuri is totally on board with his plan. She finally drops her name, revealing she's actually the adopted daughter of the super-rich Anastasia family. As soon as Ray figured out she was a count's daughter, he started bowing like crazy to apologize for being so rude. But Yuri stopped him and explained she was actually just an orphan who got lucky. She also mentioned that those thugs from earlier were probably sent by her foster dad's rivals. Word is that adopting her makes him the next archbishop, and now people are doing everything they can to stop him. Ray's totally lost on how adopting her makes him the next archbishop. So Yuri explains that while it sounds crazy, the whole world actually sees her as the saintess. Ray's jaw drops when he finds out she's a saint. And even though Yuri tries to act humble about her holy magic, she mentions her foster dad is a cardinal, but Ray stops her right there because he knows having a saintess for a daughter is what really boosted his status. Yuri snaps that her dad has nothing to do with this, and he isn't raising her just because she's the saintess. He's actually protecting her so her powers don't get used like that. She grit her teeth and got right in Ray's face, shouting that her dad actually loves her and sent her to the academy to keep her safe. So Ray felt terrible and apologized for talking trash about. He says they look like a great match, and Yuri totally agrees because her foster dad was actually the nicest guy ever. Even though he's a big shot count and cardinal, he treats every orphan with total kindness, so she really doesn't want to stress him out. She made Ray promise to keep the whole accident a secret, but he was seriously stressed that those kidnappers might strike again. Yuri tells him she'll be totally safe once she starts at the academy, since she's sure no one can touch her while she's blending into a massive crowd of students. Ray wondered if she was talking about the Royal Academy, and Yuri confirmed he was totally right. He drops the news that he's actually starting at that same school too. Yuri was hyped to find out he was heading to the same school as the guy who saved her, but Ray tells her to chill because the savior talk is getting way too. He told her that if she's gonna say stuff like that, he'll just start calling her Lady Yuri since she's the saint. She says no way and starts calling him Lord Ray since he saved her, even though Ray really wants to argue against the fancy title. But then, they caught each other's eyes and both started cracking up at the same time. Ray says sorry and asks if he can just call her Yuri while they're at school, and she gives him a sweet smile and says totally. A bit later, Yuri realized she had to find a way off that roof fast. Ray reaches out to help Yuri, but he's totally shocked when she says just heading straight down would be a total waste. Then she asks him if he can pull off that crazy whoosh move one more time. He shuts her down and says they're heading out, but he's thinking Sylphie is the one pushing for one more round since the spirit thinks this is all just a game and she's totally down for it. The big day for the Asalbite Royal Academy entrance ceremony is finally here, and Ray is busy getting his uniform ready. Dine looked him right in the eye and told him it was finally going down. Ray decided to spend the next 3 years totally focused on crushing his classes and making a ton of friends. Sylphie got super hyped when Ray talked about making friends, so he explained what it actually meant. And now, she's rooting for him to find a whole squad. Ray headed out, but he told the other two they better stay totally invisible. The whole academy is buzzing with hype, and nobody's more pumped than Alex Ezelbite. He can't stop grinning because the academy arc is finally kicking off. It's finally time for the big entrance ceremony he's been waiting forever for. Back then, the second he finally opened his eyes, he suddenly realizes he's in the body of a 5-year-old prince, lying in a super fancy bed. He was totally freaked out to find himself stuck in a little kid's body. He was pretty sure he was just a normal 18-year-old high schooler. But right now, he's Alex Ezelbite, the first prince of the Ezelbite kingdom. Suddenly, it all clicks. He died in a crash on graduation day and just got reincarnated into a whole new world. 5 years of royal memories suddenly hit him like a truck, totally separate from the 18 years he'd already lived. It was basically like his entire past life just got downloaded straight into this 5-year duh. Everything was built from those merged memories. This world is a total copy of the game he played 24/7, the real fantasy. Prince Alex is actually one of the main heroes running the show in this world. The game lets you pick from 7 different characters, but Prince Alex is the fan favorite because he's the only one who gets a massive harem route. He checked the mirror and saw he had blonde hair and blue eyes like a total prince, realizing he was 16 right when the game kicks off. If this really is the game world, he already knows exactly what's about to go down. Now that he basically runs the whole world, he dives into bed super hyped because his life is officially a guaranteed win. The butler noticed his expression and asked if he was having nightmares. He knew for a fact this game had some seriously dark endings. Like, his half-brother Siegfried could steal the throne, and if he plays his cards right, he can totally score the perfect harem he's always wanted, and by grinding his stats since he was 5, he might actually pull it off. But even if that, he's ditching his lonely past and 20 years of being single because he's about to live it up as a super popular prince. Suddenly, something snapped him right out of his head. And this was all Eric and Aries doing. Aries was stoked to be at the academy with his childhood crew, crossing his fingers they'd all end up in the same class. Eric says if he and Alex snag the top 2 spots in the exam, they'll totally run the school. And since they're the future leaders of the country, they've got to show everyone who's boss. While Aries admits he's not a genius, but he's definitely got their backs with his insane sword skills. Alex grins because he's determined to keep up and become a legendary king. So they agree that Eric will be his right hand, while Aries acts as the sword protecting them both. Alex puts on a fake smile, but deep down, he's totally dying from how cringe that line was. This is what a real fantasy world looks like, where stuff that used to be super cringy actually feels awesome because of the insane confidence of a character who's literally born to win. Finally, the school arc we've been waiting for is here, and his big story is kicking off right inside the Royal Academy. The second they stepped into the academy, he totally expected a crowd of girls to mob him just because he's a prince. But he was thinking something totally different, while the rest of the kids were just scrambling to find their names on the class list. He looked pretty bummed out, figuring everyone was just way too obsessed with their class to notice anything else going on. He tells Aries it's way too crowded, and there's no way he's getting anywhere near that bulletin board. Ray was just trying to find his classroom when he suddenly heard someone screaming at him to get out of the way. Everyone scrambled out of the way because the first prince was about to check the notice board. Alex was totally stunned because it looked like Aries was getting the wrong idea. Alex knew Aries was a total hot-headed meathead, but the guy was seriously wrecking his own reputation right now. With everyone's eyes locked on him, Alex was sweating, but he realized. He clears his throat and tells everyone to chill, saying it's totally fine to check their class and then just head out without freaking out. Aries tried to argue, but Alex shut him down instantly and said it was all good. He told everyone that at this school, princes and commoners are all just students, so he shouldn't. He's totally caught off guard when Celis suddenly shows up to roast Aries for being a trash noble, which is crazy because she's his gorgeous, perfect fiancée from a top tier. Alex can't really handle her. She's cute, but way too much, so he'd rather be with a girl who's actually chill. Celis keeps yelling at Aries, but Aries looked like he was totally over it, but Celis was still absolutely fuming. Alex was totally over being the peacemaker, so he told them to just make up and go check the board together. Eric already checked the board and told the guys they were all in the same class, but Alex totally lost it when he found out Celis was joining them too. He swung at the air because things were getting way too random for him. Eric saw the whole thing and asked if he was okay. Alex stopped and figured it was the perfect time to talk about school. Eric's stepsister and the Anastasia family's daughter were both in the class. And even though Alex knew from his past life that the family only had a son, he stuck to the script and asked about her anyway. Eric says, "Okay, but the Anastasia family actually adopted a girl a year ago. People say she's the perfect vessel for a saint." Alex acts like he's super excited to meet her. Eric kept going, saying the girl was just a commoner from an orphanage, and told Alex to stay away from her since he's a noble. But Alex totally expected that from a snobby elite. The prince was ready to shut that behavior down, but Celis beat him to it, asking Eric if he was seriously trash-talking a classmate just for being a commoner. She warned him that the girl is a blessed saint and a count's daughter now, so he better show some respect. But Alex was freaking out because he knew this would only make Eric's massive ego explode. Alex saw his four-eyed friend was about to totally lose it, so he cleared his throat to step in. He laughs off Eric's teasing, but makes it clear the gods really did bless him, then tells Lee to stop shouting because it's not how a proper lady should act in public. He tells them to stop fighting on their big entrance ceremony day and asks them to just make up for his sake. Inside his head, he was hyped because he totally crushed the act of being a super nice, peaceful prince. He was chilling on the moon when he found out those two were actually listening and doing exactly what he said. Alex knew this intro was a big deal because he was about to meet the main girls in the very next scene. He waited forever, but his hopes were totally wrecked when Celis just walked out. Even Aries and Eric gave a quick wave goodbye after they finally checked their class list. He's sweating because he's about to meet the main girl, and he's terrified he's already messed everything up. Ray notices things are starting to get messy over with Alex's group. Sylphie asks if he wants her to go grab Celis, but Ray tells her not to bother, even though he looked over and spotted the guy staring down the board. The guy feels like someone's watching him, so he whips around and asks Ray what's up. He says sorry and explains he was only staring because the guy's hair looks exactly like Prince Alex's. The guy points out their hair and eyes are totally different colors, then tells Ray he's got a really sharp eye for detail. He instantly bowed and apologized for being so rude, finally realizing this guy was actually Prince Siegfried, the second son of the Ezelbite kingdom and Alex's half-brother. But Siegfried at school, they're just regular classmates, but then he reached out his hand to help. Ray agrees and introduces himself as Ray Kreutzer, the heir to the Kreutzer Vice-County, and since he doesn't recognize Siegfried, Siegfried figures this noble kid must be from some tiny village. Ray sighed and explained he's from a tiny village a whole month away from the capital, so he has zero connection to their power games and made it crystal clear to Siegfried that he's not. His jaw hit the floor when Siegfried grabbed his shoulder and called him interesting, making him laugh in total disbelief until he realized he was being rude and quickly apologized. Since they're in the same class, D told Ray to drop the formal act and just call him C, because he's already decided they're going to be friends. They shake hands, but they're both in for a massive shock. Out of nowhere, another hand reaches out and grabs theirs. Then this girl from Class D steps up and asks everyone to just get along. She let out a huge sigh of annoyance when she realized those two didn't have a clue who she was. She introduces herself as Melty Suzerain, and Siegfried instantly recognizes the name of the legendary archmage who's rumored to have a student in their class this year. He started wondering if she was actually the disciple, but Melta just stayed quiet and gave him a totally confused look. Ray says sorry because he's totally confused about whether to call her Ms. Suzerain or just Melta, but she tells him to just stick with Melta. Siegfried keeps asking what she's up to, so Melta reminds them they're all in Class D and heading to the same room anyway, meaning she's tagging along for the ride. The three of them were so busy holding hands that they didn't even notice another girl show up. This girl is Yuri Anastasia, the saintess and adopted daughter of the Count, and she asks Ray if that handshake is some kind of new style. She thought something cool was happening, so Melte explained they were just shaking hands with the new students, but Yuri was still totally lost. As they're walking, Melte mentions Yuri is actually in Class A, but Yuri shuts that down because she'd rather stay in Class D with her friends, totally unaware that someone is secretly spying on them from the shadows. He points out the prince's whole squad and his fiancée, spotting the second prince and the main girls like the saintess and the archmage's student. But when he sees Ray, he just assumes he's some random background character. He thinks the first prince is a total letdown, so maybe the second prince is the real star. He skipped the intro in his past life, so he's totally clueless. But what happens? He was totally lost on who the main character even was anymore. Was it the first prince, the second prince, or maybe a secret route where the heroine becomes the queen? Ray suddenly gets the feeling that someone is definitely watching them. He brushed it off as his imagination, but then the two spirits in his head chimed in, pointing out how many friends he'd already made on his very first day. Ray's down, but even as the heir to Amir Vi, he's feeling pretty awkward being surrounded by people way out of his league. Honestly, he's just praying for a super chill school life without any crazy drama. Melty had absolutely zero memories of anything that happened when she was a baby. But from what she's heard, she was actually just a kid who got abandoned. He was left all by himself, stranded deep inside the dark forest. He was picked up on a total whim by Suzerain, a legendary archmage who's basically a weird hermit that hates everyone. She has no clue why she decided to save this helpless baby, and to this day, it's still a total mystery. And just like that, the kid Suzerain raised was finally all grown up. He grew up to be a total disaster who has absolutely no clue how to talk to anyone. A day after Suzerain finished watching her, she told the kid it was time to head to school. Melty was totally thrown off because out of everyone there, Suzerain was the one who was a total social disaster. He was the one who pushed her to go to school so she could finally learn how to talk to people. She followed her orders and headed to the academy, where the whole place was a total zoo with students losing their minds trying to find their names on the board. But Melty was just sitting there in the corner all by herself. She really wants to find her name on the board, but she's so tiny that the massive crowd might just toss her aside. At first, she just wanted to use her powers to blast through anyone standing in her way. One line out. Input 1, but she decided not to do so and ceased her power because it was bad. Input 2, she'll get in trouble. And if she gets the boot, Susan is definitely going to make her pay. She knew for a fact that she was walking straight into a world of trouble. She just chilled there waiting for the crowd to clear out, when suddenly, the first prince's squad showed up out of nowhere. Ares screamed at them to move it and get out of the way! She finally saw her opening the moment the crowd cleared a path to the bulletin board. She didn't waste a single second and bolted straight for the bulletin board. Sure, some of these guys look scary, but she'll be totally fine as long as she keeps her distance. She checks the board and spots 2 people in Class A with Vaughn names, instantly remembering Susan's warning to stay far away from anyone with that title. She was confused why he had to be so careful around those guys, and even though Suzerain probably told her why, she totally forgot because she honestly doesn't care. She checked her class and was left totally clueless about what to do next. She gave herself 3 big options: head home for a nap, head home for a meal, or just head home and grab a snack. He's deep in his head, but something about this just doesn't feel right at all. Suddenly, a guy speaks up from behind her, asking if she's in Class D and guessing they're actually classmates. She spun around to see her classmates Siegfried and Ray, realizing that sticking with them was definitely her best move. She saw them shake hands and realized that's how classmates are supposed to greet each other. So she's totally using this to level up her social skills. Luck is totally on her side today, so she walks right up to Siegfried and Ray. The 2 of them were totally caught off guard when she suddenly reached out and put her hands on them. She announced she was in their class and told everyone they better get along. Ray, Siegfried, and Yuri are totally clueless, but Melta just throws her hands up, stoked that she finally finished her work for the day. Ray, Siegfried, Melta, and Yuri are heading down the hallway, hunting for their assigned rooms. The 3 of them finally tracked down their room. Yuri didn't want to go anywhere and looked like she was totally about to burst into tears. She gave Melta a massive hug because she didn't want to leave her side, but since she wasn't in their class, the 3 of them had to leave her out in. Siegfried was just chilling inside, waiting for their teacher to show up. 3 girls spot him, and they literally can't stop staring. Everyone at school thinks Melta is super adorable because she's just so tiny. And meanwhile, nobody is even looking at Ray. Finally, their teacher showed up and told everyone her name was Miriam Stanford. She's gonna be leading the entire class for the next 3 years straight. She's a total pro at magical theory and runs the elective class, so she told everyone to sign up if they're interested before making the front row start their introductions. The students introduced themselves one by one until it was finally Siegfried's turn, and all the girls were dying to know if he was actually a secret prince. Siegfried reveals he's actually the 2nd prince of the Asalbite kingdom, but even with that royal title, he's just a student like them and wants everyone to treat him like a normal classmate. He's super confident in his sword skills and magic, and after he hyped up the whole class to get stronger together, even Ray was totally stunned by his massive aura. Once the speech wrapped up, Siegfried turned toward Rai and flashed him a grin. But the girls totally got the wrong idea and thought he was waving right at them. Miriam calls on a super sleepy Melty, and when she stands up, everyone's shocked by how tiny she is. Some kids think she's adorable while others are literally wondering if she's even their age, but Melty just ignores all the noise. She introduced herself and said her special skill is using original magic. Then, she just sat right back down. Everyone was super confused because her speech was so short, and they were clearly waiting for. Ray spots 4 students ahead of him talking trash about how nobody in the class is special, saying only Siegfried can actually take on Lord Flaga, which makes the guy in the middle start grinning like crazy. With the last kid finally done, he stood up and demanded to show everyone why he's way better than these basic classmates. He introduces himself as Flaga Landon, a guy from one of the top noble families in the land who's ready to prove he's worth the hype. So we should definitely expect some big things from him. He's stepping up to run for student council for the class, and after giving Siegfried a look, he knows they're both aiming for the same seat. But he's definitely not planning. Flaga kept bragging that high-class nobles like him are just built different demanding respect from everyone below him while his 3 lackeys cheered him on. Siegfried just let out a bored sigh since he had zero interest in fighting Flagga, and right then, it was finally Ray's turn to step up. He stood up to introduce himself, explaining that his home is way out in the sticks and it's his first time in the big city, so even though he might act like a total country kid, he really wants to make friends with everyone. A few students actually clapped for him, but Flagga just laughed in his face because he'd never even heard of the Kreutzer family. He even calls Ray a total country boy and begs to be his loyal servant. Flagga's whole vibe totally flipped the second Ray rejected his offer. Flagga totally snaps and starts screaming because his deal got rejected, even trash-talking Ray for being a lowly viscount who shouldn't dare defy a high-ranking marquis. But Ray stays. He remembers that the Lansdowne family lives south of the capital, but his own home is way up north. It takes a massive 2 months just to travel back and forth, having a vassal from. Ray found out he was becoming a big deal in the capital, but he couldn't care less, which really set Flagga off. He explained that after graduation, he's just heading back home to his own land, since being famous in the city doesn't mean anything when you're living that far away. He just smirks and tells Flagga to save the boring politics for someone who actually cares. But Ray's jaw drops when Flagga snaps and tries to force him to be his subordinate. He shuts them down because he's just not interested and sees 0 point in it. Then Flagga looks over the second he hears someone laughing. Siegfried started roasting Flagga for taking that massive L against Ray. He straight up admitted that Ray wouldn't gain anything by serving him, and that joining the non-folk family was a way better move since their land is way closer. Plus, the Queen Dowager and his big brother's fiancé are both from that family, so they don't even need to rely on that far-off Lansdowne estate anymore. Flagga absolutely lost it when he heard that, shooting a terrifying glare straight at Siegfried and Ray. Once the room goes silent, Miriam tells everyone to drop the drama and stands up to give them a serious heads up. She said the Royal Academy is all about skill, so whether it's magic, swords, or grades, you're free to challenge anyone at any time to prove you're the best. Starting private beef is strictly against the rules, so if you're gonna fight, you have to do it the official way. It doesn't matter if you're a regular kid or... Then she called up the next person to keep the introductions rolling. Ray's not even sure if he's actually safe yet, wondering if Miriam waited until the last second just to look cool, when he suddenly realizes someone is staring a hole right through him. He looked down and saw that ugly Flagga was still absolutely fuming. Ray finally breathed a massive sigh of relief the second class was over. He nearly jumped out of his skin when Flagga slammed the desk and told him to stop acting so big just because of some lame noble titles. Ray just kept his mouth shut and let it go, but then he heard Siegfried over on the side laughing his head off. He narrowed his eyes and asked if he was seriously having fun with all this chaos. Siegfried apologized and explained that Flagga is a total nobody at home because his older brother is a genius, so he acts like a big shot in public and expected Ray to just bow down the second he showed off his noble rank. Ray crosses his arms and says he'd totally take the L if it was about actual skill, but he's not bowing down just because someone was born into power, and Siegfried thinks that. Most people would totally wag their tails and beg like dogs just to get into the light. A big shot noble actually reached out to them, and you'd have to be crazy to turn that down, unlike those losers who follow Flagga around like loyal dogs. Ray basically hates anyone who acts all high and mighty just because of their parents' power, since they didn't actually earn it themselves, and that's why Siegfried is so confused. He's the heir to his family but doesn't have a single official title to his name yet. Ray claps back that he's not a viscount yet, but he's got a massive title in the Navy, which blows Siegfried's mind since he's a military officer himself. Ray says his dad might be his boss, but he works him way too hard, and even as a major, He's basically a lone wolf with no squad who only jumps in when things get crazy. He even bragged about hunting pirates and taking down monsters, leaving Siegfried absolutely stunned. He gave Ray a tap on the shoulder because he thought the guy was actually pretty interesting. Talk about luck. Ray just scored a super cool friend on his very first day. He was totally hyped, but Siegfried gets dead serious and tells him he doesn't care about the fame of being second prince because he's actually just grateful for the position. Ray was gonna stand out no matter what, so he had to treat that prophecy like a real warning, and now he's totally stressed because it might actually come true. Siegfried says it's not even a guess since he's already besties with the saint and a grand mage's student, basically proving he was born to be the center of attention. Ray was sweating bullets wondering if the guy would say he's friends with the future queen candidate, and he was dying to see his reaction. Melty tugged on his clothes to get his attention, so he turned around and asked her what was up. But Melta totally shocks him by yelling, demanding to hear more about that monster hunt he mentioned earlier. He didn't even know where to look because Melta was demanding every single detail about the pirate raids, and while Siegfried looked totally chill, nobody could tell if he was actually fuming. He's dying to hear every juicy detail and wants him to spill everything, which totally catches Ray off guard. In the end, he just told them to grab some food and totally take their time. Over in the A class, a teacher named Ernest von Lonsuna is officially welcoming his students. He announced he's the new head of the year and said he's hyped to spend the next 3 years with all of them. He says the school is all about who's the best, and while there are plenty of ways to show what you can do, the class competition is the ultimate test. First, every class in the same year fights to be number 1. Then the winners face off to see who's the absolute strongest in the whole school. Every class picks their 5 best students to represent them, so everyone is grinding hard to make the cut. The big match isn't until fall, so they've still got some time. They need to grind and train hard every single day. Then, the teacher calls them up to start right at the front. Alex is super nervous about his intro, but Celis is already calling the shots, figuring that since Alex, Aries, and Eric are in Class A, they're definitely getting picked along with her and Yuri the Saint, and she's totally sure Eric's sister will be the backup, which means the whole squad is already locked in. Class A is packed with elite nobles, so this whole competition is basically rigged from day one. Their teacher, Ernest, is actually the Queen's brother and Prince Alex's uncle. The match hasn't even started yet, but she's already stressing over how it'll go down when she suddenly remembers Ray and wonders what he's been up to. She was totally shocked when Eric actually hyped up Alex's intro, and now that the prince is done, she's probably gonna zone out. Alex looked totally chill, but he was actually sweating bullets because that intro was super intense. The game never had scenes with this much detail, so he just hoped he pulled off the whole prince vibe. And judging by Eric's face, he totally nailed it. Alex remembered the saint was supposed to be in his class, so he started scanning every single student to find her. He spots Yuri Anastasia introducing herself, and she mentions that everyone calls her a saint, which is totally embarrassing for her since she's just a normal girl who wants everyone to be friends. Alex's eyes go wide as he stares Yuri down in total shock. He thinks she's totally awesome, and she's way more graceful now that he's seeing her for real. He figured if he played the saint's route, she'd finally be his girl. But if he goes for the harem route, he can actually date every single one of them. Just thinking, surrounded by total strangers, she was freaking out and kept telling herself that her introduction wasn't actually super awkward. She really wished she'd been put in Class D with Ray and Melte because she was super worried about making friends in a class full of fancy, high-ranking nobles. She shut her eyes and let all her worries just disappear. Growing up in the orphanage, she never thought she'd actually make it to a school like this. She wasn't even sure. She starts thinking back to that moment Ray saved her and carried her off like a total princess. She's totally blushing because she really thought this was just a simple rescue mission. Celis notices her face is switching up faster than she can even keep track of. Ernest told everyone the real training kicks off tomorrow, so they better be ready before he finally dismissed the class. The three students walked right up and said hi to her. Celis was totally shocked when they asked her to grab tea after class, but she had to turn them down because she was already headed to the castle. The three girls were totally shocked, thinking she was just meeting a royal, but their minds were blown when she revealed the king himself was personally training her to be the next queen. Everyone is just totally obsessed with her. They start grilling her about her royal training and if she studied stuff like economics or leadership. But since they're all shouting at once, Celis just laughs it off. She was way too busy, so the three girls headed out. But Celis thanked them and said they should totally hit her up when she's finally free. She flashed them a big smile and waved as they headed off. Sally sighed, realizing everyone only cared about her because she was a future queen, while Yuri just sat there totally lost in thought. She was totally second-guessing which elective classes she should actually pick. One line out. The input is 3 sentences. Should I provide 3 sentences or 1? Usually, in these types of prompts, if the input is a paragraph, the output is a paragraph. She was just glad she could finally have some peace at school. But then, out of nowhere, her jaw hit the floor when Celis suddenly snapped her back to reality. Lady Celis is basically on a whole different level because she's a high-class noble, the first prince's fiancée, and the girl who's set to be the next queen. Celis asks if she scared her since she looked so spaced out, but Yuri tells her she's totally fine. She was totally struggling to pick her elective classes, so Celis told her she should probably choose something that actually fits her role as a saint. Yuri got all shy and told her to drop the saint title and just call her Yuri. Celis tells her the school doesn't have specific classes for priests, so she should try history or magic theory for something useful, or just pick magic refinement to level up her skills. She tells Celis she's thinking about joining a magic class since her friend from another class is signing up too. She's still not sure about the rest, so she's just gonna try a few out and see if she wants to keep going. Celis thinks Yuri's friend is a total win and points out that you won't know if a class fits until you actually try it, and even though Yuri agrees, she's still struggling to figure it all out. Celis is low-key jealous that Yuri has such a great friend, but the saint just smiles and admits she's actually feeling pretty lonely since they got split up into different classes and she doesn't know anyone in Class A. Yuri was totally shocked when Celis suddenly stood up and offered to be her friend, leaving her wondering why a high-ranking duke's daughter and future queen would even want to hang. Celis super confused because she's a noble too, so she tells her there's no reason to be nervous around her. Yuri explains that since she's a saint Yuri was totally shocked when Celis' whole mood just flipped in an instant. She remembers Ray telling her to try new things and just keep going if they feel right. Out of nowhere, the future queen grabs her hand and says she's so hyped to finally have a real friend and she's totally looking forward to hanging out, while Ray starts sneezing like crazy. A little later, Sylphie asks Ray to play, but he's super busy getting ready for tomorrow and tells her to give him a second. Sylphie totally flips out because Ray hasn't hung out with him once since they got to the academy, leaving Ray scrambling to apologize. Dine jumps in and tells Sylphie to quit bugging Ray, and just as she's about to snap back, she stopped and floated over to Ray to see what he was doing. Ray said sorry again, explaining he can't just flex his powers with so many people around the school and dorms. He told, he's zooming around the dorm humming a tune while Ray apologizes to Dine for being so distracted lately. But she just tells him it's totally fine because just being by his side is all she She told him that just getting to go on a date once in a while would be plenty for her. Little Sylphie was so young that as soon as he heard the word date, Ray's mind was totally on the practical magic class, wondering what kind of wild spells everyone was about to pull out. The next morning finally rolled around. The Class D squad all grouped up, ready to get their magic lesson started. Flaga steps up first and slams his magic straight into the center of the board. His crew went wild, hyping him up for that high score, and Flaga just flexed, saying it's exactly what he earned. Now it's Siegfried's turn, and Lord Flaga is already talking trash, saying it's bad luck to follow his act and that he better not make a fool of himself. Siegfried can't believe this guy is flexing over something so lame, so he gives him a death stare and warns him that if he keeps talking trash, he's actually going to start trying. He stood up looking super smooth and aimed his finger at the board like a gun. Ray and Melta were totally caught off guard by his fighting stance. Lord Flaga started clowning on him for being so weird, but Siegfried just ignored him and kept doing his thing. Melta was seriously hyped seeing him focus all that mana into his fingertips to get total control. Ray was totally shocked that she could actually tell. Melta says she can even see his rare dark powers. But Siegfried's fighting stance is something she's never seen before. Ray told them he'd actually seen that exact stance before from a top-tier S-rank adventurer. Siegfried blasted the board with his magic to get it moving. Melta and Ray were totally blown away. Miriam was totally blown away by his perfect mana control and insane power, so she gave Siegfried an A+, the highest score anyone had seen yet. Lord Flaga was absolutely fuming when he saw Siegfried's score, and his 3 worried underlings were doing everything they could to calm him down. He bragged that he was way more elegant than the second prince. Lord Flaga turned to him and said that Siegfried was actually pretty good for a royal, but he warned him that he wouldn't get a second chance. He keeps trash-talking and calling him a weakling, but Siegfried just ignores the noise and heads straight for Ray. Siegfried brushed past Ray, saying the stage was already hot, and it was time for Ray to go out there and totally humble that loser. Then he pointed right at 3 girls who looked like they were his total fangirls. Even Melta was rooting for him, but Ray was totally sweating bullets while trying his absolute best to stay under the radar. As he stepped up, Flaga started trash-talking him for being a country noble and said he couldn't wait to see his pathetic low-level magic. Ray just brushes him off and keeps going, announcing he's about to unleash his wind magic. The other students were shocked he was actually using wind magic, with some calling it totally mid, while others just laughed and told him to go ahead and embarrass himself with that weak spell. He knew Flaga's squad was behind the trash talk, and since Flaga's hated him from the start while Siegfried just laughs, he realizes that playing it safe will only make the bullying worse. He stepped up and snatched a sword ready to get in on the action. Flaga starts laughing and talking trash again, calling him a hopeless country kid and wondering why he's even holding a sword in the middle of magic class. They even questioned if he actually knew what the mission was, but for the second time, he just straight up ignored them and told them that since he's got the chance, He called out to Sylphie in his head, raised his blade, and told the spirit it was time to unleash the whirlwind. Sylphie knew the drill, whipped up a gust of wind, and wrapped it right around the sword. Siegfried and Melta were totally stunned when the wind started swirling right around his sword. He swings his sword and slices the board clean in half. Lord Flaga and his crew were totally losing it when they saw that thing split right in half. Miriam is totally digging Ray's magic, and after he calls his move a flying slash, she realizes it's been ages since she's seen it, making him joke that they're basically like father and son. He told Ray that she'd heard he wanted to stay low-key, but after that insane display, his dream of being invisible is totally over. No joke, there was no doubt the guy was a total straight-A genius. Ray's totally stressing out and wondering if he went too far, but since Miriam recognized his move after all this time, he's starting to wonder if she actually knew his dad. A crowd of students swarmed him to give him props, shouting that his move was totally insane and like nothing they'd ever seen before. Suddenly, the whole crowd swarmed him. Everyone was freaking out, asking if he mixed magic with his sword skills because it looked so sick, while others just hyped up how insane his power was. He's convinced that he should be the one standing there instead of Ray, and while he'd get it if it were Siegfried, there's no way he's letting some random country kid take his place. He's trying to tell himself it was all just luck or that Ray definitely cheated. His crew totally backs him up since they think he's way more skilled anyway. Typical lapdogs. Ray felt Flaga's intense glare, but then Siegfried suddenly shoved him and shouted that he was actually super impressed because he never thought Ray would totally wreck that target. The second prince keeps teasing him about how he always stands out no matter what, making a super flustered Ray beg him to just drop it. Siegfried kept talking, saying the kingdom is unlucky to have someone with zero ambition, but he didn't care about luck since he has no plans to inherit the throne anyway. Out of nowhere, Melta shows up and starts hyping them both up, saying the second prince is solid but Ray is on a whole different level. She was totally hyped when he pulled off that move where he wraps his sword in a blast of wind. Ray and Siegfried were totally lost when Melty suddenly whipped around, drooling over the thought of trying that out too. Swords are way too heavy for her to lift, so she decides to forge one out of pure fire and is already hyped just thinking about it. Flaga was fuming because shooting magic from a sword is totally unheard of, and he couldn't believe a basic wind spell actually sliced that target in half, so he ground his teeth convinced there had. He even called Ray a cheater because he couldn't believe a low-level country noble actually got a better score than him. Refusing to take the L, he ordered his goons to check the target for any signs of cheating, but just as they grabbed it, someone yelled at them to get out of the way. Everyone was totally blown away when they saw Melta letting off a massive wave of mana. Deep in the heart of the thick forest, a foot was hopping from one branch to the next. It turns out that Foot belongs to Ray, and Sylphie is right there with him. He stopped dead in his tracks the second he spotted two birds. He asks if he can come inside, and it totally looks like the birds understand him. He makes his move and starts booking it at full speed. He finally hits the spot he was looking for, and just like he figured, the place is totally empty this early. He told Sylphie they could hang out and play there as much as they wanted. The little spirit was so hyped that he started spinning around like crazy. That's when he whipped out both of his swords. He jumped straight into training with Sylphie right by his side. They didn't even realize Sally was heading straight for them. But the future queen candidate noticed something was off when she saw leaves just floating in the air. She immediately started looking around to see what. He was totally stunned to see someone moving with such smooth and perfect skill. She thought they were just dancing in the wind, but then her eyes went totally wide. Her eyes widened as she realized the mysterious person was actually Ray. She was totally stunned by how he moved, looking so light it was like he didn't even weigh anything. She finally remembers the Kreutzer family has divine wind powers, and now everything makes total sense. She realized Ray was way more impressive than she first thought, and he looked like he was having way more fun than when he fought her guards. Ray just kept on grinding, pushing himself harder than ever. He froze right there when something caught his eye. He looked back to see Celis, and the future queen immediately hit him with a cheerful good morning. He said he'd been up for ages, which totally caught her off guard since she expected to be the first one there. But Ray looked super stressed and asked if she'd been watching him the entire time. His jaw hit the floor when the future queen actually apologized, admitting she was so caught up in the moment that she couldn't find the right time to say anything. He was super embarrassed, but honestly, he was just glad it was her who caught him. Sally actually blushes for a second, but then she totally flips out when she remembers he hasn't even tried to see her since the ceremony. She snaps at him, demanding to know if he's just been super busy this whole time. Ray pointed out they'd still see each other in their elective classes, so she finally chilled out and told him he'd better hang out with her for a long time after their next business management class. Ray totally gets her, so he gives her exactly what she wants. Since they were already there, Celis whipped out her sword for a quick duel, way more hyped to fight a partner than just practice solo, and Ray was totally down for it. He spotted someone heading their way and decided to back off for now, which left Celis looking totally bummed out. She warns him not to chicken out next time they meet, and after Ray agrees, he just turns around and bails on her. Celis let out a huge sigh because she really wanted to talk, but Ray just walked away, leaving her staring at his back. She wondered who the heck would actually dare to ruin her alone time with Ray. Her eyes went wide the second she realized it was actually Prince, her fiancé. She was totally lost for words while everything was going down. She wondered if Ray was being nice because he knew Lord Alex was coming, but since she couldn't feel anyone nearby, she just brushed the thought away. He showed the first prince some serious respect and dropped into a deep bow, but Alex was totally blown away and just couldn't find anything to say. He noticed she tied her hair back so it wouldn't get in the way of her sword swings, and she looked totally ready for action in those training pants. She looks totally adorable, but she's got this heavy, serious vibe that makes her feel super intense. She's so gorgeous that he's actually starting to catch major feelings for his fiancée. Celis suddenly snapped him out of his thoughts, asking if he was always up this early. He told her she was right and that he's always here training first thing in the morning, but today, she actually beat him to it. Actually, this is literally his first time ever stepping foot in that place. During the school arc, random events pop up to make characters like you more, so he made sure to wake up super early to catch the morning ones he knew were coming. Celis admits she woke up super early and figured she'd get a quick workout in. Waking up early was totally worth it if she got to see him, and her words hit Alex like a bolt of lightning straight to the heart. His whole body was shaking as he realized right then that he was already totally in love with her. The future queen was totally lost, so she just shouted his name. He was totally blanking until he remembered his dialogue options, and even though he knew training together was the winning pick, he was so nervous he started stuttering like crazy. He realized that training together meant staring right into Celis' eyes while they swung swords, and even though he was super nervous and embarrassed, he sucked it up and told her it was time to. Seriously, this guy is a total moron. He gets totally flustered around his fiancée and can't even act like a prince because Celis is honestly just way too cute to handle. He knew it was all random, but he'd get another shot. And if he just stayed chill and got used to the chaos, he could totally fix his mistake with one right move next time. He was dead set on making sure he got it right the next time. Celis figured they should spar since they were both hanging out, but she was low-key stressed that she'd accidentally made Alex mad. She's totally frustrated because she has no idea what he's thinking. Their talks are always awkward and just cut off out of nowhere. She tells herself she needs to be way more careful. Ray kept his promise and grabbed some tea with her while she filled him in on everything that happened. Ray was in total shock, but she kept right on training even with Lord Alex standing right there. Celis nods and explains she just got up early to work on her sword skills, mentioning he was there first but totally bolted. Then Alex starts training all by himself without saying a word, so Ray totally gets where she's coming from. He flashed back to seeing Alex grinding with his sword in the courtyard and gave him props for putting in that early morning work. The future queen agrees because Alex never slacks off, and she totally respects him for always putting in the work. But he's always so cold that they can't even hold a conversation. And even though she hoped they'd train together this morning, it just didn't happen. Alex is the first prince, so he's stuck carrying the massive weight of everyone's expectations. Then you've got the second prince, Siegfried, who is the total opposite. He doesn't He wished Siegfried was actually serious like Lord Alex, and that just made Celis lose it. She realizes Rai is totally right about Alex being way too stiff and just wants him to chill out. But then Rai brings up Siegfried, asking if the prince mentioned turning down the student council to avoid being compared to his brother, and finally asks Celis if she's actually gonna join. The future queen agreed, saying since Alex is gonna be the student council president, she's totally in, because if his own fiancé doesn't show up, everyone will start gossiping that they're on bad terms. Ray asks how many members are actually on the student council. Celis told Ray he seriously needed to start caring about the student council. She tells him the group has 5 members and an assistant, offering to get him in since there's space, but Ray shuts her down immediately because he knows it's just a one-way ticket to trouble. He's totally shocked when Celis says she's gonna ask Lady Yuri from their class, and the future queen definitely catches his reaction the moment she brings up the saint. She asks if he knows her, but Ray keeps it a secret and just says he knows Yuri because she's super famous. He knew he'd get interrogated if they found out he knew Yuri, so he asks for other names, but he totally spits out his tea when Celis mentions Melty along with Lady Erica. He can't even imagine Melty in the student council because she's the last person who belongs there, and they seriously need to stay as far away from each other as possible. He suggests Lord Flaga, a guy who's totally obsessed with power, and Celis realizes he's actually the second son of the super-rich Lansdowne family. So while his background is perfect, she's still not sure if he's actually got the skills to back it up. She really wanted another girl to join since she was the only female officer. So Ray figured he was out of luck until Celis told him he was the one exception. Ray straight up told them there was no way he was ever joining the student council. While that was going down, Lord Flago headed straight for the student council office. He quickly drops to his knees before Prince Alex, who realizes this is the second son from that fallen noble family. Alex knows this isn't just a friendly visit and asks what's really going on, so Flaga admits he's there to talk about something super serious. The Lansdowne family has been running the student council at the Royal Academy for generations, and he's totally determined to keep the tradition alive by snagging a spot for himself. Flaga knew that usually, the top-tier noble gets to be the student council president and hand-pick the whole team. That meant Prince Alex was the one in charge with all the power. Alex totally got it. But the competition is insane this year with big names like his brother Siegfried, his fiancée Celis, the saintess Yuri Anastasia, and even Eric's sister Erica all in the mix. Flaga was totally caught off guard when Alex told him that adding him would make the group way too big. They were even looking at Melta, the legendary Archmage's student, so he asks Flaga why they'd ever pick him over someone like her. Flaga explains that Siegfried isn't interested, and since Erica and Yuri are adopted while Melta is just a commoner even though she was the Archmage's student, Alex agrees that Siegfried is a total mystery who stays low-key because his mom is just a lady-in-waiting. He probably wants nothing to do with the student council, but then Alex explained that this school is all about skill. So even a regular kid can join the student council if they're strong enough, especially since he heard Meltis was a total beast with an Ma. It was clear his powers were totally on another level compared to hers. Flaga was totally stunned, remembering the time Melty let loose that insane power, and while he's better with a sword, he knows he can't touch her when it comes to magic. He grits his teeth thinking his student council dreams are totally over. But his face lights up with hope the second Alex offers to make him a candidate. Alex needs to check with the crew before making the final call, so he asks Eric for his take. And while Eric was hesitant at first, he eventually gives the green light because the Flaga name. He mentions that every single member is from Class A, including Lady Celis, since he thinks it's totally normal for the council to only have the top-tier students. Alex agrees that keeping things within Class A is the way to go and asks Ares for his take, who says Alex is the president, Eric is the VP, and Celis is the treasurer, while he'll just handle the heavy lifting since he's more about muscle than brains. Now only the secretary spot is left, and since the other grades have girls in that role, he thinks a girl would be the perfect fit to keep things balanced. Flago was super annoyed with Aries, convinced the guy was nothing but a total player. Sweat was pouring down his face as he glared at the trio, fuming that they rejected him and wondering why they dared to disrespect a high-ranking noble from the legendary House of Lansdowne. Alex saw his friends were totally on board, so he told the guy he wasn't giving him a single chance to win. He asked if he knew the freshman welcome party was coming up, since that's where they always reveal the new student council members. If Flaga wants to hit up the freshman welcome party, he's got one crazy condition. He has to bring either Yuri Anastasia, Erica Milford, or Melty Suzerain as his. Those three girls he talked about are actually running for student council too. Even if he makes the cut, he still needs to stay on their good side. He's got to convince one of them. He thanks the first prince for the help, promises to crush this opportunity, and then leaves the three of them behind. The moment Flaga leaves, Eric asks Alex if he's totally sure about the deal, because even though the guy has a famous name, he doesn't think Flaga actually brings anything to the table. Alex nods because he knows it's the straight-up truth, but then Eric asks him for the real reason why. He says they've given him a tiny shot at winning, but even if the odds are basically zero, it's all on Flaga to make it happen. He also said Eric is definitely going to be his sister's partner, and Eric's all for it since he's not letting Flaga anywhere near her. That's one. Aries cuts him off, guessing that Yuri Anastasia is the only candidate left. Alex says he's right and mentions that everyone is obsessed with this saint. A secret war to win her over has. Alex starts spiraling about why Flaga is late, thinking he's gonna totally freak out and try to force Yuri into a date. And he's the one who's gonna step in and save her from this total mess. He's got a genius plan to win over the saint and get Yuri onto the student council at the same time. He actually felt a bit bad for Flaga since he was basically just, "You'd expect nothing less from their leader, Alex." Flaga headed toward his lackey while plotting his move on Yuri, thinking that even if she's the famous saintess, she's just an orphan who can't turn down a high. He told them the whole thing was basically a done deal. He was super hyped for the big freshman welcome party. Ray headed over to the cafeteria to grab some grub. As he stuffs his face, he can't stop hyping up how insanely good the food tastes. The portions are massive with tons of options, and he feels way more relaxed since it's mostly regular kids there instead of snobby nobles. Those rich students stay in their own fancy restaurant. Ray was hyped because the lunch lady loved him and kept piling his plate with massive portions, but it was actually way too much for him to finish. He overheard two students talking about the freshman welcome party, and it totally grabbed his attention. He knew he had to make a choice fast, but he was still totally hesitating. He was totally shocked Siegfried teamed up with Melta so fast, especially since she joined the second he bribed her with a snack. Siegfried picked someone totally low-key so he wouldn't trigger the First Prince's group or cause any drama. Ray thought they looked like a total power couple standing side by. Ray got some invites too, but Dinah shot them all down. So Sylphie picked someone who could actually keep up with him while he just stood there totally clueless. So he literally just used eeny, meeny, miny, mo to make the choice. Ray heard a huge racket and a voice desperately begging someone to stop. These beaten-up lackeys were forcing him to take the gift, shouting that it's a total insult to turn down their master. Ray heads over to the crowd and hears a student mention that Flaga was messing with someone. That girl is definitely Yuri Anastasia, and she's absolutely blasting Flaga's group, shouting that she already said no because she doesn't even know these guys. She thinks it. Flaga totally lost it, yelling that he was being super polite, and she still had the nerve to reject him. Flaga totally snaps and grabs Yuri's hand, yelling at her to shut up and just be his partner. But the second Yuri spots Ray in the crowd, she rips her hand away. She sprints over to Ray, grabs his shirt, and yells at Flaga that she's already going to the party with Ray, so she's turning him down. Ray was completely frozen by Yuri's words, while Flaga was straight up losing his mind with rage. He screamed at Ray, demanding to know if Yuri was actually his partner. But Ray just stayed cool and said that's just how things ended up. So Flaga grilled him on why he was even, but he still just tells them he's in the cafeteria just to grab a bite. Flaga was fuming because that wasn't the point at all. He just wanted to know why this guy was butting into their conversation. Ray looks totally lost as he stares at Yuri, who's already starting to tear up. He told Flaga he only showed up because they were being super annoying. He kept going and told Flaga straight up that he called them out for being so loud, reminding them they were in a cafeteria and totally ruining everyone's lunch. He explained how they'd swarm a girl with a huge pack of guys, making it look like a bunch of punks just bullying a helpless girl to anyone watching. Flaga absolutely loses his mind again because he's a noble who can't stand being called a punk. But the crowd sides with Ray and starts roasting him, saying the name actually fits him perfectly. The crowd starts shouting because it's super obvious Yuri already rejected him. But Flaga just won't stop and keeps trying to force her. People are yelling that they won't. He demanded to know who did it so he could end them, but the crowd didn't care and kept roasting him for being a total poser who only hides behind his family name. They scream that he's totally useless on his own, calling him a brainless noble and straight-up trash. Someone even chucked something that smacked him right on the head. Flaga finally snapped and let his power go totally wild. The crowd saw the chaos and started running for their lives, while a worried Yuri asked Ray what the plan was now that everything had spiraled out of control. Ray just called out to Sylphie, and the little spirit cranked up the volume as he prepared to make his move. He slammed his hands together, and the loud bang made the entire crowd freeze in their tracks. Flaga and the whole crowd are totally lost, but then Ray just apologizes for making such a huge racket. He tells Flaga to hold up and get his story straight, reminding him that he asked Yuri to the freshman party. But even though Flaga says yeah, Yuri confirms she actually shot him down. He figured there was no point in making a huge scene and dragging everyone else into it. Flaga gets salty because Yuri rejected his invite, but Ray shuts him down by saying everyone gets to choose for themselves. Flagus just smirked and told him he was dead wrong, saying weaklings have to obey the strong so nobody gets a choice, and this total moron actually looks proud of his own trash logic. Right then, those two were so blown away they could only manage to say wow. Ray breaks it down for Flaga, explaining that Yuri is a count's daughter and a saint, so she's definitely not low status. And Flaga totally agrees, since she gets messages from the gods and uses holy magic. He treats her like total trash just because she grew up as a poor orphan. He says he has no clue how Yuri faked her way into a noble family, calls the whole adoption a total disaster, and then trashes Yuri's dad for being so easy to fool. Yuri totally snaps and gets super emotional when they talk trash about her foster dad. But she calms down. The second Ray puts a hand on her shoulder. He's really trying to push for a change in a school where your skills are the only thing that matters. It doesn't matter if he's a big-shot marquis or Yuri's just an orphan, because inside this academy, nobody has to do a single thing he says. Flaga grit his teeth and snapped at Ray, asking if he was seriously trying to pick a fight. Ray just smirks and asks him what he's gonna do if he really wants to throw down. Ray was still Yuri's partner, and he wasn't about to give that up. So he told Flaga that if he really wanted to take his spot, he'd have to. Then he did a total 180 and decided to turn in the request himself. Flaga gets to pick the time, the place, and exactly how this fight is going down. He's basically begging to be crushed, because if he loses, he's no longer Yuri's partner, and Flaga finally gets his big chance. He shot Yuri a quick wink, because it's still totally her call if she wants to team up with Flaga. Flaga accepts the challenge and plans to totally wreck Ray's weak magic with his real power. Students were literally racing each other to the court just to see the practice match go down. Siegfried was just walking down the hall when he overheard two students talking all about it. He sighed and went to see the person who actually thinks this duel is just for fun, especially since it's Flaga Lansdowne from Class D going up against Ray. He seriously almost lost his breakfast right then and there. He was totally confused, since Ray usually stays under the radar, making him wonder if Ray did something to really get on Flaga's bad side. Maybe Flaga did something to get under Ray's skin, but then Melta suddenly appears out of nowhere, totally losing it because Ray is heading to a practice match. She was also dying to know if he'd start using his magic the second she left him alone. She was hyped to see the match and really wanted to scrap with Ray herself. She even started hating on Flaga for keeping all of Ray's magic to himself. Then she told Siegfried Just then, students start flooding into the area. Ray looks around and realizes a massive crowd has already gathered. He looks around and spots Siegfried and Melta, and the second prince is actually waving him over. Melty looked like she was totally fuming at him. That's when Yuri called out his name. She apologizes for the duel being her fault, but Ray tells her to chill and stop worrying about it. He might look chill, but he was actually fuming at Flaga. He wasn't about to stay quiet after watching his best friend get insulted right in front of him. Yuri totally freezes the second she hears the word important, and when Ray asks if she's okay, she just brushes it off as nerves and begs him not to get hurt. He shot her a wink and promised there was no way he'd lose to Flaga. He's ready to beat Flaga to a pulp and force him to kneel before Yuri, but she shuts that down fast because it's way too much. Ray stared her down just to show he was totally chill and wasn't sweating it at all. He started laughing because he was so hyped to have Yuri in his corner, and she told him to give it everything he's got since she's totally rooting for him. A bit later, Miriam kicks off the practice match, announcing that Flaga Lansdowne is heading into a one-on-one fight where magic is totally fair game. She looks over at Ray since he's the boss, and when he's asked if he's down for combat mode, Ray gives the green light. She starts laying out the rules, explaining that you win by making your opponent pass out or give up, and while vital hits are banned, the healers are so good that broken bones and coughing up blood are basically no big deal. She turns to Flaga and Ray and asks if they're finally ready to go. The two were just locked in a massive stare-down until she finally gave them the signal to go for it. Both of them whipped out their swords and squared up, ready to fight. Flaga asks if he actually came up with that fighting stance all on his own. He bragged that the Imperial Guard taught him everything he knows, and while his goons hyped him up, Ray just agreed that having a good stance is super important. Without wasting a second, he leaps straight at Flaga. He slashes him and tells him that a flashy stance is totally worthless if you don't actually know how to use it. Flaga curses Ray out and shoves his sword forward so hard that Ray has to scramble back to dodge it. Siegfried thinks that move is totally useless in a real fight, and Ray is basically just playing around with it however he wants. He bragged that he already knew exactly how the fight would end, and Melta totally agreed, calling the whole match a total snooze fest. She's yelling about how swords are totally lame since she wanted to see Ray's magic, while Siegfried just stays quiet, wondering what the heck Flaga did to make Ray so mad. One line out. Usually this means if the user provides a block of text, I provide a block of text. If the user provides one line, I provide one line. The input is one paragraph. Sylphie tells Ray to go for it since Flaga is a total creep who won't leave Yuri alone, and now the little spirit is begging him to take the guy down. Ray's totally down because that was his plan anyway, so he lunges at Flaga and swings his sword, but Flaga just barely blocks the hit. Ray told him straight up that all the disrespect toward Yuri and those insults about her adoptive father, Anastasia, were really hurting her. He put all his power into the sword and swung with everything he had. He looked that cocky monkey right in the face and told him there was no way he was forgiving him. Ray gets right in his face and asks if that's seriously all he's got. Ray tells Flaga to go ahead and use his fire magic so he can't make any excuses for losing, which makes Flaga so mad he just snatches a sword from his subordinate. He flashed a cocky smirk and told him he was about to see his true power. "Check out the red snake, a sword made of straight-up fire." He flexes that this fire magic is a Lansdowne family legend passed down for generations and asks if they're scared yet. He tells Ray that with this, he can turn him into straight-up ashes. Siegfried stared at the magic wrapping the weapon, convinced that this dude just straight-up copied Ray's technique. Melta explains that copying isn't actually a bad thing, as long as you flip it into your own style, admitting she used to mimic Suzerain herself, which leaves Siegfried totally stunned that she's actually dropping some real wisdom for once. Melta adds that Flaga is straight-up garbage at naming things, so she's definitely docking some points for that. Back at the arena, Flaga is totally flexing his flashy red snake right in front of Ray. He asks if this is way scarier than his lame wind magic and says it's way too late to regret letting him use it, making Sylphie lose her mind while Ray stays totally chill. Flaga commands his red snake to coil around Ray and burn him to a crisp. The flames were slowly closing in, trapping him in a circle of fire. And this had Yuri feeling super nervous. The fire was already swallowing him whole, and the students were shouting that it was way too dangerous to help. Flaga was hyped, screaming at his red snake to take Ray out and burn him to a crisp. Ray unleashes a massive blast of wind magic. He lets out one quick slash and the fire just disappears. They're shocked to see he doesn't have a single scratch on him. Flaga was completely shook, wondering how on earth Ray wasn't getting roasted by those flames. "That's because he just straight up blew the whole thing away." Flog totally snapped and just kept the hits coming. But it couldn't even touch Ray because Sylphie was right there blowing everything away. Now it's Ray's turn to jump into the action. He charges straight in and starts hacking away at that gross monkey. Everything looked fine for a second, but then his clothes suddenly shredded into rags, making him look like a total bum. Someone better toss this cocky monkey a coin. Ray pointed his sword right at the guy's face and asked if he still wanted to fight, making the dude grit his teeth in total frustration. He just dropped to his knees and totally gave up right in front of Ray. And just like that, the winner was set, leaving Yuri totally losing it with hype, while Siegfried actually looked like he was having a blast. Meanwhile, Flugga's crew was starting to seriously freak out about him. Miriam finally shouted that Ray Kreutzer won, and with Sylphie and Dine celebrating, the whole crowd went totally nuts. Ray watched closely as those dogs backed up their master. Siegfried walked up and claimed he knew Ray would win all along, but Ray was sure he was just watching for the fun of it. Siegfried is cracking up over the look on Flaga's face, asking Ray if that's what it looks like when someone's spirit totally snaps. But then someone calls Ray's name and he turns around to see who it is. Melta slammed her head into him so hard his bones almost snapped. Ray asked if she was actually rooting for him too. He was just getting ready to thank her. Melta shuts him down and demands a fight, leaving Ray looking totally clueless. Melta cuts him off mid-sentence and demands a practice match, since she thinks it's a total blast to just spam her magic everywhere. Ray explains that you can actually turn down a practice match, because if you couldn't, people would just force you into a totally unfair fight. He tried to turn down the match, but Melte is way too stubborn and straight up refused to take no for an answer. He knows the rules. Once you finish a practice match, you're totally locked out of fighting for 3 whole months. Out of nowhere, Yuri rushed over to him and just started bawling her eyes out. He shot a nervous look at his two friends before giving her a quick reminder. He said everything would be totally fine since he'd never lose to a guy like Flaga, while Yuri just figured she was acting out of fear. Rei suddenly drops to her knees, catching her totally off guard. She asks if she can tag along and join him for the big student welcome party. Yuri turned bright red and covered her face, whining that it was totally unfair. Melte goes ballistic and calls Rei a total jerk for making Yuri cry, but Siegfried steps up instantly to back him up. Rei was actually super torn about the party since he couldn't find a date, so Yuri felt bad and offered to be his partner instead. Yuri totally got the situation and was super hyped to be his partner. Rei realized he forgot to make Flaga beg for forgiveness, so he offered to go drag him back right now, making Siegfried wonder if Rei was actually a total demon. Right then, Alex realizes it's finally time for Flaga to make his move. Outside, he overhears two students totally geeking out over how epic the battle was. That's